18if is an anime you might not have heard of. Well, maybe you've heard the absolutely stellar opening theme from Me musician Teddy Lloyd. From summer 2017, it's an extremely loose adaptation of a puzzle RPG game for phones. Our main character Haruto finds himself trapped in a mysterious dream world, and each episode centers on him, a dream world researcher named Katsumi, and Lily, a seemingly omnipresent girl who travels throughout multiple dreamscapes, as they try to defeat a variety of witches. Each of these witches is the product of Sleeping Beauty syndrome, wherein they fall into a coma because of a traumatic event in their lives. What is cool about this anime is that each episode has a completely different director and visual style. For the most part, they tell fairly self-contained stories, and things get pretty bizarre. It seems there was little emphasis on much continuity in tone, because the episodes range from serious, depressing, and grim, to completely comical and utterly absurd. Conceptually, it's the type of thing I would love to see more of. Taking a premise that gives a huge degree of freedom and allowing the directors to take it in any which way they want. However, ultimately 18if suffers from just being not all that good. The vast majority of the episodes are pretty ugly visually. Even if the character designs are shifting episode to episode, it should at least stay on model within that episode. The stories can present interesting ideas, but often come across as somewhat nonsensical, trying to throw out so many things simultaneously that it's hard to really get a grasp on anything in particular. Pair that with a hasty attempt to tie it all together into one cohesive narrative at the end that feels rushed, unnecessary, and kind of boring, and the series is not one I would call good. Yet I can't really say I regret watching it. It's absolutely insane and all over the place, but the train wreck is pretty entertaining to witness, paired with some genuine high points here and there. To an extent, it's more so the idea of 18if that kept me watching. The constantly shifting style, both narratively and visually, is in itself rather fascinating. At least when this show's bad, it's usually still interesting. I'll take that over the boredom of most anime any day. There is, however, one particular episode that I would unequivocally recommend to everyone, whether or not you have an interest in seeing any of the others. Episode 7, Soshite Daremo Inai, or And Now There Are None. Directed by Koichi Chigara, best known for his work directing Fullmetal Panic and Last Exile. As a lover of all things aesthetic, I'll admit the main reason for my recommendation is for its phenomenal visual style and execution of such. Other episodes of 18if often do have a solid aesthetic, but it's in the realization of that aesthetic that comes the more questionable moments. Episode 7 is an astonishing anomaly. It is both the most visually unique out of the entire series, but also manages to execute it excellently. What we have is a storybook, papercraft visual style, realized by way of the oh-so-dreaded CG. That's right, the season prior to Hoseki no Kuni's premiere, we get some beautiful CG animation in a TV anime. Granted, this is only a single episode, but I think it definitely deserves some recognition. Unfortunately impeded by being sandwiched within a fairly unpopular and overall not that great 12-episode show. One of the things that I think makes it work so well is that it's not trying to look like 2D. While it does reflect that storybook look, it goes a bit beyond with this boxy look of three-dimensional paper, which feels like something that was built with its CG presentation in mind. They're not scrambling to try and mimic the look of something else and inevitably do it worse. Rather, it utilizes the unique advantages of the medium to create something visually distinct and downright beautiful. There's even a nice utilization of limited frame animation, something you also see done in the more recent Into the Spider-Verse. All of the designs are simple, but also really memorable because of that. They're clearly distinguished from one another with shapes that could be recognized from a mile away, and there's a really effective use of a subtle unevenness that gives it a more personal, intimate feeling that could easily be lacking from designs so geometric. But core, I hear you say. What about the story? It's kind of difficult to talk about it without spoiling things, and since the whole point of this video is to make you go watch it yourself, that would kind of defeat the point. To put it simply, it's a melancholic tale of a prince and his two close friends, and how he ruins his relationships after ascending to the throne and falling to the pressure of corruption. There's reference made to the real historical figure of Pol Pot, who was the leader of a communist party in Cambodia and responsible for many atrocities, as well as to the Queen Marie Antoinette's famous quote of "let them eat cake." Though I outlined the basic narrative, one of the neat things about this episode is it is structured in a way that you could reasonably interpret it in any number of ways. Certain things could be taken to be literal or metaphorical, especially considering that the events play out within a dream. So what we're being presented is not necessarily the actuality of the situation, and could perhaps be a version of it shaped by various subconscious influences. For instance, the basic aesthetic in the characters who guide us through this story take the form of a Tin Man, a lion, and a scarecrow, which is later revealed to be because there was an audiobook of The Wizard of Oz playing on the radio next to the person dreaming. While it can be somewhat confusing due to its vagueness on some elements, I think the overall story it presents is fairly compelling, and though it could have gone deeper with more time, it utilizes the time it does have quite well. You can interpret everything literally and get a pretty clear and interesting story in itself, and that there is the possibility of symbolism and metaphorical meanings on top of that just adds another layer to it all. The episode also closes with another Teddy Lloyd produced song that is absolutely fantastic in and of itself, but also plays well into the story proceeding both lyrically and musically, shifting between three main musical characters that seem to follow the emotional arc of the episode itself. It's beautiful, it's intriguing, and it's only 22 minutes long. Do yourself a favor and go watch episode 7 of 18if. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Special thank you to my patrons Talon, Frogus, and Roggle. If you'd like to support what I do, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/horrorreviews. That's my thing. I'll see you tomorrow.